Hey everyone, welcome back. After spending a little more time getting more familiar with the Nemeth Designs Schweizer 300, I figured it was time to do some auto rotations. So I looked up the POH and got a general idea of how to perform them. I've never done one in the actual aircraft, but I've done them in R22s and R44s, so I figured the same principles apply. So we'll take a second and look at what the POH has to say and see if I can attempt to do it that way. I'm flying out of Plymouth-Canton Mettetal Airport today. This area has great photogrammetry near Ann Arbor, and it's got a nice upgraded airport that you can get from Flights NTO. I'll put the link in the description. It's 1 Delta 2 is the identifier. These photogrammetry areas in Microsoft Flight Simulator, they really shine. It looks like it really looks at this airport. I've flown in here to bring aircraft to maintenance because the maintenance hangar that the company that I fly with, the flight school that I fly with uses, is out of this airport. So I've ferried aircraft here and I've taken aircraft out of here. So I can tell you that it looks just like this when you fly into this airport. So it is pretty incredible looking at the scenery and looking at this airport here in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it's just like it is when you fly here in real life. Alright, with all that aside, speed things up a little bit, get us to the auto rotation, kind of go through my process. In R44s and R22s, we would pick the spot on the windshield and then we would do a countdown to start the process, and then the countdown would be a 3, 2, 1, roll the throttle off, down the collective right pedal half cyclic, and then up a little bit on the collective about 1.5 inches, would get you about the right rotor RPM for a glide speed between 65 and 75 knots. So here doing it in the Schweizer is a little bit different aircraft that I'm not familiar with, so I applied the same principle. I rolled off the throttle and I put down the collective, put in a little right pedal, put in a little half cyclic, and tried to manage the rotor RPM. And this is where I kind of noticed that the needles did split, but there wasn't much I could do to change the rotor RPM on the gauge. Didn't make much of a difference no matter what I did. It kind of stayed wherever it was when I dropped the collective. So that aside, I performed the maneuver as if the gauges were in green and the helicopter performed as it should. So I'm not sure if it's an issue with the gauge or what exactly is going on, but based on what the gauge was saying, there should not have been enough inertia or RPM left in the rotor system to manage the landings that I was doing, but the helicopter was performing as if the rotor RPM was increasing when I flared, even though the gauge did not show it. Okay, let's speed it up. Let's go around the circuit again. So obviously the manual for the Schweizer says that the speed should be 52 knots, so that's a little bit slower than what I'm used to. So I did try over the next few auto rotations to aim at a target at a lower speed for the auto rotation, hoping that would have given me a higher rotor RPM on the gauge. Really didn't seem to make much of a difference. It all kind of stayed wherever it was when I dropped the collective all the way down to 0. This is where the benefit of having an instructor show you how to do these things really comes in handy. I'm taking guesses at the target spot on the windshield, the actual method and proper procedure of how to enter the auto rotation. Like I said, I'm using techniques that I've learned in real world training, but not on this aircraft. So it's working, and the aircraft is performing the maneuver, but I don't know if necessarily I'm doing it accurately. But the simulation seems to be working, the flight model seems to be working. It auto rotates. So like you can see, the gauges are split. In the simulation, the engine is not powering the rotor system, so we're achieving successful auto rotations. Get around the circuit and let's do it again. With this next one, I tried to do the roll off with the governor still on. It didn't really work, so I had to turn the governor off. For each one of these auto rotations, I shut the governor off first, and then roll the throttle off. It was the only way it was working for me with the simulator. So I'm not actually following the correct procedure in the POH, but something more or less that I modified to work within the simulator. Okay, let's speed it up, let's get around the circuit, and let's do it again. The nice thing is, like, when you practice these things, the best way to do it is to complete circuits. And every time you go around the pattern, you get a little bit of practice on your takeoff and your climb, your turns, maintaining level flight. These are all things that you would do throughout the normal course of a lesson, because you have to get yourself to the point where you can practice the auto rotation and do it safely. And the best way to do that safely is to aim for the runway, so you have the entire length of the runway to perform the maneuver. So these are things that you would do. You would go around the circuit in the pattern and then perform an auto rotation. Maybe do a couple of quick stops down the runway, and then go around the circuit again and perform another auto rotation. And these are all things that you do in your practice hour of flight that you would do with an instructor. So for this one, we'll do a power recovery at the end. Rather than doing a full down auto, we'll roll the throttle back on and kick the governor back on and try to maintain the rotor RPM and terminate this auto rotation into a power recovery hover. Alright, let's speed it up. We'll go around the circuit again. Normally during an auto rotation, you can manipulate the speed of the rotor with the collective and the cyclic. If you pull aft on the cyclic, more airflow goes through the disc and you can actually speed up the rotor RPM. And conversely, you can tilt the cyclic forward and you can not only increase your speed, but you will slow down the rotor RPM. So you can balance the rotor RPM with the cyclic, and you can also balance the RPM with the collective. So you can add a little bit. So if you're coming around a curve and you need to do a 180 auto rotation and you really have to pull in some bank angle, it's going to really increase your rotor RPM, but you need to make a turn to make a target landing. You're going to have to add some collective in, put that drag back on that rotor system in order to maintain proper rotor RPM so that you don't overspeed the rotor system. That is one thing that is really missing from this model, and it's something that they've noted about the sounds, and hopefully it's something that gets improved in the future, but the rotor and transmission sounds are something that are very important to pay attention to and listen to during an auto rotation. They give you clues to what's happening. It's something that I really miss on this model. This is the last one in series from the outside, standing on the runway watching this last auto rotation. Each one got a little bit easier. Like I said, I just started to ignore the cage and just perform a maneuver, and it responded as I would expect it to. So yeah, it auto rotates. You can use the governor and the throttle properly for a reciprocating or piston engine helicopter in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It auto rotates properly. This one, obviously, there needs to be a little work done with the gauges to have all the RPMs reading correctly. Because if this actually was at the RPM that those gauges were reading, it should have fallen out of the sky. So, but it still performed the maneuvers. Please like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. Thanks for watching. Be safe, be kind, and I'll see you in the next video.